Alright, I guess I'm live. Let's see how this works. A couple of nights ago, I was on Netflix and wanted to watch a show, not the show I'm gonna talk about, because what happens when you go on Netflix is the top of your screen, if you're not quick, you'll see a scene from the latest number 1 thing, most popular, or whatever Netflix is trying to push. And, what happened was, "Oh, it looks like I got somebody, viewing. Hello, Miguel H. Wow. Welcome to Thank you for being the first person to join one of my live streams. Feel free to speak up if I say anything you like or don't like." So anyway, I'm on Netflix, and this thing catches my attention, so of course I had to watch it, and it was called The Light We Cannot See. And this is beautiful. I'm not gonna give any spoilers. I'm only gonna give away, like, basic stuff that you know in the first couple of minutes of watching it. I binged it in 2 days. It's 4 episodes. Um, Amazing thing, and one of the reason I'm bringing it up now is because this blind woman in occupied France in 19 and about to be liberated France in 1944. Normandy had already happened, but the Allies weren't in her town yet, and she's, sitting there at a shortwave radio just speaking out to the world while bombs exploded all around her. And, we live in the world we're living in right now, and here I am sitting alone in a living room, the bombs are not exploding around me. I have a secure roof over my head. I live in Southern California. I don't like the earthquakes, but I have to say, I'm thinking about what's happening in the Middle East on both sides, and I'm just grateful, and, I've it's the first time I've felt this level of gratitude for living in this country at this day and age. Except for 9/11, we've never really experienced the horror of war on our soil, and I hope we never do, neither in my lifetime or my children's or my grandchildren's, or they start having kids. Oy vey, not the point. Anyway, she was speaking truth out there, and I want to talk about what's been happening with independent media lately, because I've been angry and frustrated. But after a private, Twitter conversation yesterday with a fellow Tulsi supporter, and by the way, I proudly wear my Tulsi 2020 T-shirt. And why do I support Tulsi? Why did I support Tulsi? And I'll get back to that conversation in a second. Why did I support Tulsi, and why do I continue to support Tulsi? Here's the deal. Here's the one thing I will never get past. She was a rising star in the DNC. She was on a path to be the next who knows what, probably on a path to vice president or president if she stayed with it. But remember the days when, before all this splintering happened in a million different directions, when so many of us were just down with Bernie Sanders, Bernie against the establishment, Bernie taking on the medical lobby and wanting Medicare for all, or basically wanting to pull the plug on those parasites, those health insurance companies that take our money, that are in between us and our doctors. This was the huge issue in 2015 going into 2016. And the DNC screwed him. And the vice chair of the DNC, the aforementioned Tulsi Gabbard, quit her job in the DNC and became a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. She completely blew up her entire political rise just by doing that. They never liked. Oh, hang on, let me see what Miguel's up to. Bernie turned out, yes, 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 Miguel. Bernie did turn out to be a huge disappointment. Um, I'm not going to comment on the other thing right now, but I'll get to it. Um, but Tulsi quit the DNC, like I just said, to become a surrogate for Bernie. She went with her principles. She sacrificed power for principles. So when she first, actually, it was before she even announced. I was a big fan of hers between that and her going to Standing Rock and organizing those vets to stand in between the rubber bullets and the water protectors. Um, in way sub-freezing weather. I was a big fan, and I joined one of the Tulsi groups on Facebook, and I used the word leader in regards to Tulsi, and somebody said, "What do you mean by leader?" And it gave me pause to think about it, and I finally came up with an answer. Because there's politicians, and that was my comment. There's politicians and there's leaders, and Tulsi's a leader. And somebody called me out on that. And my answer was and is a politician will sacrifice their principles for power. A leader will sacrifice their power for principles. Therefore, in my humble opinion, Tulsi's a leader. And agree or disagree with her current stance on what's happening in the Middle East, and her pretty consistent stance about how she feels about her perceived threat of jihad. Whether I agree with that or not is not the purpose of this discussion. But I will say that she's sincere in her beliefs. She's consistent. She hasn't lied. It's how she feels. But now we have what Randall Patrick McMurphy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a bunch of a bunch of chickens at a pecking party. Because what's happening now? RFK Jr. speaks up in support of Israel, and again, agree, disagree, whatever, but he gets completely attacked. Nobody's calling out anybody else. Well, you know, they're flaming Tulsi over it, but she's not a candidate for anything right now. But no other candidate is being called out to support or oppose Israel. It's only Kennedy, and he's giving his honest opinion, and my God, I mean, he actually, and I think I have the tweet here. Let me see. I'm not good at this. Let me. No, I'll get to that one. I'll get to that one. Here we go. Let me see if I know how to share my screen. Please bear with me. I am a boomer, and I am just learning how to do this StreamYard thing. So which tweet am I looking for? That ain't it, but I will, since it's up there, I might as well read it. Yeah, this was tweeted a week after October, October 14th, a week after the madness, the initial madness. Some are on one side, some are on the other side. Both sides point to the other side and scream, "Evil!" Then there are the few who try to be the voice of reason by validating both points of view and are rewarded with ad hominem attacks from both sides. This is FUBAR. Yes, and there I am quoting myself. But where is that Kennedy? Here's the Kennedy tweet. Instead of championing free speech, the U.S. actively persecutes journalists and whistleblowers. I'll pardon brave truth-tellers like Julian Assange and investigate the corruption and crimes that they exposed. This isn't the Soviet Union. The America I love doesn't imprison dissidents. So again, that's my Facebook profile picture that I posted the day after the attacks on October 7th. And let me try to find StreamYard again, and let me unshare my screen. Stop screen. There we go. I'm back. And thank you, Miguel. Yes, you know, I don't have too many purity tests, but I think freeing Assange, if I have a purity test, that is my main one. So we have this person on Twitter who I'm not going to mention names, but Kennedy made a speech, and it was a pro-Israel speech, and this was after October 7th. Anyway, this person who's a very high-profile supporter of Julian Assange, very vocal, called Bobby Kennedy a chud. I don't even know what a chud is. I think it must be some kind of acronym. I didn't bother looking it up. A chud and a scumbag, because he made a speech espousing his personal beliefs. You know, you could agree, you could disagree. But I wonder what this high profile. So I actually tweeted, I said, listen, if we're going to be at it, if people who are into free Assange and free speech and defund Ukraine and all this good stuff, if we're going to be at each other's throats over something RFK Jr. said, it hurts all the movements. And this high profile supporter of Julian Assange, accused me of gaslighting, told me to fuck off. Somebody else told me to eat shit. That's what I mean by I was trying to be the voice of reason there. I'm trying to say, listen, this higher principles and fighting over RFK's speech isn't going to get Assange freed. It's all it's going to do is have people like me pissed off at people like you, Misty. Oop, I didn't say that name. Um, because end of the day, we have common causes that whatever your opinion on what's happening in Israel versus Palestine / Hamas, our common causes are going to get horribly diluted. They already are. People are at each other's throats, which brings me to independent media. So I first started watching some of the shows 7 years ago. I was again, 2016 was transformative year for me because what they did to Bernie, I did not abide. I did not vote for Hillary. I did not support Hillary. I was Bernie or bust until Bernie busted himself by failing to follow through on his endorsement of Tim Canova to unseat Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. That's when Bernie lost me. That was in August of 2016. It was before the election. So I knew of Trump since I was a kid. Trump was my landlord. I never was a fan of Trump. No way I was voting for Hillary. So I basically publicly endorsed Jill Stein, who, if somebody came to me, hey, blathering boomer, everybody else just got the Men in Black thing done to their foreheads and nobody's voting today. You get to pick the next president. Who's it going to be? And I would have said, it's Dr. Jill Stein. Of those four, one didn't know what Aleppo was, and one was corrupt beyond belief, and one was, in my eyes, pretty evil at the time. I've shifted a little bit on that guy, but not the point. The point is, Jill Stein. I was called a misogynist. I was told to grow up. I got called all kinds of names, and friendships that were fairly close really have never come back from that. And I was also very disgusted. It was a big wake up call. I was an avid MSNBC watcher. Well, let me see. Miguel said something else. Thank you. Yeah, I hope you didn't either. No, there was no way I was going to pick Hillary. It's great to have a watcher, Miguel. I appreciate you're here. You're the only one here, and I'm not a big podcast, and I kind of like this intimate thing where I can actually interact with people. You watch a show like Jimmy Dore, and the thing scrolls so fast you can't even read your own comments. So, not that I don't want to get more viewers. Let's see how this live stream goes. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say: independent media. So I started watching independent media in 2016 because I was pissed off about the DNC and I was disillusioned with the whole thing. And I was really pissed off at Sarah Silverman with her "you're being ridiculous" comment at the convention. Philadelphia was a horror show. So independent media. I actually started with H.A. Goodman, and where I learned about clickbait. He'd have all these sensationalist titles like "Hillary indicted," except Hillary wasn't indicted. Hillary was never indicted, but I get excited and I check it out. But then through H.A. Goodman, I discovered some others, Jimmy Dore and Kim Iverson and Nico House and a few others. And, I kind of rotate. I to this day, I'm still a particular fan of Hard Lens Media. I'm not trying to plug anybody. So Combo Catch came along later. Anyway, for all these years, so I turned my back on MSNBC, CNN, which is where I got my truth. Like my cast, by the way. Basketball career is officially over. I used to watch Keith Olbermann back in 2008, and he had me petrified of Sarah Palin. So anyway, I gave up on mainstream media because independent media provided a fresh point of view, and mainly because, or largely because, independent media was covering stories that the mainstream media was not covering, and they were doing a pretty good job, in my memory, maybe my selective memory, of yes, shout out to Heartlands Media. Hey, Kit. My selective memory maybe that I was getting fed a good truth. That's what I want is truth. There's it's in a couple of my songs. I use the same line: "Truth has become a rare commodity." And I felt that I was getting a good dose of truth from independent media, independent journalists, and I was a big supporter. And I went to New Hampshire with a crew of them for the New Hampshire convention when we were hoping that Tulsi would come in third or fourth and get it back on the debate stage that she was being screwed out of. I'm really blathering here, ain't I? The point is, we jump ahead to now, and now here's where it gets delicate. The thing in the Middle East, and again, you saw. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. That was my initial tweet after. Whoops, I guess I wasn't sharing the screen before. So let's see if I am now. All right, is that working? That seems to be working. Okay, so that picture was my initial reaction to what happened on October 7th, and on my Facebook, it's to this day my Facebook profile, and just the only caption says "if only." I was actually sitting in my living room with a fairly high-profile independent journalist with a podcast, and we were watching a lot of the coverage together from other independent networks. And at the time, we were equally horrified. And I'm not going to mention any names. I already mentioned one. And I'm not going to mention any more names. But we watched. We saw the perspective of one guy who was absolutely cheerleading the Hamas video footage, laughing at it, laughing at people getting beaten up, laughing at people being kidnapped. Horrible, shocking. I still, at that point, I still didn't really understand what was going on. Honestly, to allow for my ignorance, I thought Israel had settlers on the Gaza Strip, and it was the Israeli settlements being attacked. I didn't realize, watching all that was actually Israel being attacked. And I'm not saying that to put any value or diminish any value. I'm just saying that to illustrate that I didn't know that much. I've gotten a crash course on the history of that region in the last month. Anyway, the reason I'm broadcasting tonight, sitting here in the comfort of a nice Southern California living room with bombs not dropping everywhere around me, I can't imagine what it must be like to live there. I really can't. And again, I can't imagine what it must be like to be evacuated from your home and then see your home destroyed behind you when a bomb falls on it. And I also can't imagine what it's like to be living your life in a kibbutz and have the horrors of hell come down on you out of nowhere. I as a citizen of the world, I condemn all unnecessary violence. War is war, but when civilians get attacked, and especially when civilians get tortured, and when civilians get killed for no reason, we're over the line. I'm not, everybody's screaming ceasefire, ceasefire. I don't know. I don't claim to know. Two sides to the story. I want to see the dying stop. And at the same time, I want to see the long game played. I'm not enough of an expert, and I don't think any of the kids, um, at the protests are enough of an expert to know whether or not it makes sense to take out Hamas and what the long-term effect of that would be. But it just seems so strange to me that this overwhelming support, I'm not going to say so much support of, I guess it's support of Palestinians, but from the river to the sea, I mean, if you look at Hamas's charter, that's calling for a lot of people getting killed, the wiping out of the state of Israel. I've over the last month, I've heard a lot of arguments for and against the initial creation of the state of Israel. And again, without making value judgments, I could say with great certainty there are two sides to the story. But what I will also say is Israel has existed now for 3 generations. This is not going to be adjudicated now. If we adjudicate that now, if we question what happened in 1948, how far back do we go? Do we rewrite the European boundaries before 1918? Do we give the region back to the Ottomans? Do we give this country back to the Navajo and the Lakota? Or do we just start learning Spanish because where I live, we're really part of Mexico? Conquest is horrible, but it's also very real. And there's a certain reality that has to be taken into account. And Israel does exist. Okay, let's see. Sorry, but I found the IVS version very questionable. They've been caught in so many lies. Yeah, it's again, I I find both sides very questionable right now. I find the IDF questionable, and I find Hamas questionable, and that's the thing. I just want truth. But here's what bothers me, Miguel, and anybody else who might listen to this eventually. Independent media is only telling one side of the story right now. They're talking about, and I'm not diminishing how horrible it is that innocent people are being killed by bombs in Gaza right now. I'm not diminishing that at all. But having that be the sole focus and not talk about what happened on October 7th, or give it very grazing lip service, not talk about the violence happening at some of these demonstrations happening, not talking about how Jews have had to lock themselves in the library of Cooper Union, about the kill the Jews, slit their throats thing going around at Cornell. What independent media is doing, either probably not purposely, they're either bought off or they're stooges, because I dare say I myself for 7 years have had emotional reactions to things I've heard on independent media because I'm getting truth that I'm not getting on mainstream. And it feels to me like the independent media personalities that I've watched all these years are in lockstep with each other, purely taking a side, purely condemning Israel, ignoring what happened October 7th, ignoring what's happening in the universities. And because they're doing that with an impressionable audience, they're adding to the problem. So mainstream media continues, of course, to only tell one side of the story on so many things. So why would I be upset with independent media for doing what I perceive mainstream media has been doing forever? That's because I fucking hold independent media to a higher standard. I hold them to the standard that they themselves claim to be. Oh, I'm still sharing my screen. Sorry, I'm a blathering boomer here. Let me get my pretty face back up there. Yes, I'm holding them to the standard they created for themselves, and they're not living up to it. And to quote a person that I've watched for 7 years, and it is so strange that I watch him now through a very, very different lens. And I know no longer take, and shame on me for taking every word anybody ever says as gospel. But I took this guy's word as gospel for years, and now I see there's an agenda. And you know what? With that one Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, some years ago said it's all about the Benjamins. Well, the independent media version of that, it's all about the clicks. It's all about the likes. It's all about the views. It's all about the monetization. I can't be demonetized. I have one viewer, and and thank you, Miguel. It's precious to me that you've hung in there, and I know you don't agree with a lot of things I'm saying, but I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate your hanging in there and being my first viewer. I hope we get to chat sometime. I lost my train of thought. Happens when you're a boomer who blathers. What was I talking about, Miguel? I don't know. The point is, yeah, shame on me for blindly following somebody who I just perceive to be a truth teller. And I'm watching him through a different lens, a hard lens, as it were. And it's like I said, oh yeah, I can't be demonetized, not just because I only have one viewer. I can't be demonetized because I'll never be monetized. I don't come close to having 500 viewers, and I don't come close to having whatever number of hours of viewing I have. I'm just on here blathering. Um, by the way, this is a rare political one for me. I don't usually do politics. Mostly I tell stories. I have one that I began a couple of days ago because I figured out that November 3rd, 1970 is the day that I got a job in the New York City Brooklyn Public Library for $1.60 an hour, minimum wage at the time. And on November 3rd, 1975, exactly 5 years to the day after I took a job in the public library for $1.60 an hour to support my bowling habit. I was in a bowling league when I was in high school. I was 16, and it was expensive, and I needed a paycheck. 5 years later to the day, I was in handcuffs in a police station being accused of selling 100 hits of LSD to a state undercover cop. And what happened in those 5 years is a series of really bizarre stories that led to. It's a cautionary tale, and the main theme of the tale when I tell it is when you raise your children, make sure they're not afraid to tell you the truth. It's not and as I told my kids raising them, and hey, don't get me wrong, I loved my parents, and my being scared to tell them the truth, which is ultimately what led to my being in prison because I just told a series of lies that got bigger and bigger. When I raised my kids and they lie to me and I get the truth out of them, I would very much be very, very calm and say, listen, see, you were afraid of my reaction, but you didn't get the reaction you were afraid of. You got me thanking you for telling the truth. So this isn't a question of whether I can trust you or not. You just lied to me, but I'm still going to trust you. No, the question is, do you trust me? Do you trust me to have a decent reaction to the truth? And they still lied. They both still lied, but I hope not as much. But the point is, if I had learned not to lie, I never would have had to spend a year in state prison. I know I've completely digressed from the topic of this video. Yes, thank you, Miguel. I was indeed. Again, I got Miguel H. Whoever you are, thank you for being the one and only. This is me for the first time interacting with somebody commenting in a thread, so this is a big deal. And maybe one day there'll be two people in the thread. By the way, I'm curious, Miguel, how did you know I was live? Because I didn't announce I was going live or anything. I just put it out there on Twitter and YouTube, where I have a handful of subscribers. So how did you come across this live stream? Cool. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for requesting notifications, and hopefully you weren't disappointed in this segment. And again, I know that you and I don't agree on every single point I made here. Who else is here? Oh, I can't even try to say that one. You have two very scary vowels in a row at the beginning. Oh, VS Adams. Okay. Well, hey, hello, VS Adams. Hello, VS. All right. Excellent. Actually, according to the eyeball in the upper left-hand corner of my StreamYard thing, there are three people viewing right now. It might be counting me, or is there a third person on there besides Miguel and VS? Maybe not. Okay. Well, hey, do either of you have anything you want me to blather about? While we're here, I mean, everybody, all these live streamers, when they get done saying, please like and subscribe, and here's my Patreon, and here's this and all. That's the thing too. I didn't realize until this week that how much of a role money plays in this. It's how they make a living. It's not how I make a living. I have a day job, not in the public library. That was a long time ago. But I got a good day job. I do this because, first of all, I have a pretty amazing story of how a 16-year-old kid, honor student, former Boy Scout, working in the public library for $1.60 an hour to feed his bowling habit, never did any drugs in his life, ends up going to prison 5 years later, and then how he survives prison. So there's always someone else watching. Well, good to know. Other than Big Brother. Again, I'm grateful for the two of you. It's all good. It's all good. Tell us. Tell you what, VS Adams. I will tell you. Ask me anything. Well, I guess while he's typing or she's typing, or I don't want to do dead air. I'm live. Um, yeah, this is like podcasting without a net. When you Oh, my experience. Wow. I'll do the outline of it because the details are a long story and I couldn't do that in one podcast. But for now, I'll do the outline of it real quick. So yeah, I was working in the public library, and then senior year of high school went without incident. Went to college, and here's when my mother, and again, I miss my mother. She died in 2011. I love my mother, but she made a really, really bad parenting mistake. The last words she said to me at the State University in Albany, as she dropped me off in my dorm room before she walked out with my dad to go drive back to Brooklyn, she said, "And if I find out you even associate with anybody who smokes pot, I will disown you." That's an exact, very, very unfortunate quote. So I didn't get high until actually I got high for the first time at a Washington's birthday party in February of my freshman year, after spending the entire first semester being the only one in the dorms who didn't smoke pot. Tried it, had a weird reaction to it. Month later, tried it again, had another weird reaction. Anyway, skip ahead. A year later, I'm dosing. I discovered LSD. I thought LSD was the key to unlock the secrets of the universe. It was mind blowing. I wrote one term paper in college that got an A, and was the use of LSD in treating alcoholism. And LSD is not for everybody. I've never said it was for everybody, but there was a huge demand for it on campus. And concurrent with everything else going on, I was gambling at an age way too young to understand about how to do it right. I was going to the track. When I went back to Brooklyn after freshman year, a friend of mine bought this device called the Kelco Racing Calculator Slide Rule thing. I took a look at the manual, cracked the code, applied the formula, went to Belmont Park, and won $50. Went back the next day, won $50 again. Now, mind you, my last job was for $1.60 an hour. $50 was a lot of money. And the way I saved up my money from the job in the public library, I bought U.S. savings bonds. Now, if you guys are millennials, you might not know what a U.S. savings bond is, but back in those days, $18.75, you bought a $25 bond, and 7 years later, you can cash it in for $25. So I had $300 worth of U.S. savings bonds in a drawer in the dresser in my parents' house in Brooklyn when I was in college. Like I said, I went to the track a couple of times in a row, won $100 between the 2 days, but then inevitably you could picture the gambling thing like a bell curve. It goes up, it peaks, and it goes down. But I cracked the formula. So me losing didn't make sense because I cracked the formula, and the formula worked. I won $50 the first day and the second day. So it didn't occur to me. So after I'd lost the whole 100 and then another 100 on top of that, actually, it didn't even occur to me at that point, because at that point I just thought I was really unlucky. So I started cashing the bonds. And long story short, when half the bonds were gone, I cashed the other half of the bonds, put it all on one horse to show, which meant I'd cash if it came in first, second, or third. Of course, the horse came in fourth. Now, my mother knew I had $300 worth of bonds, and I was terrified to tell her the $300 worth of bonds were gone. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a job or anything. I went to the movies, and I saw this movie called Cisco Pike. Chris Christopherson, Gene Hackman. Chris Christopherson played a musician who gets former weed dealer who gets caught in corrupt Gene Hackman cop's web and is forced to start dealing again. So basically, unlike the French Connection, the cop was the bad guy and the dealer was the good guy. I'm like, oh, not everybody who sells weed is a bad guy. I could be a good guy, sell weed, and make money. And when I do, I'll have $300 and I'll go buy $300 worth of US savings bonds and put them back in the drawer and just hope my mother doesn't notice the dates on them. So I went back to college planning to buy weed and sell it and make money. And that was my big plan to recover my gambling losses. And it would have worked, except I didn't stop gambling. There was a racetrack up near Albany called Saratoga that I ran trotters, harness racing. I used to take the Trailways bus up there. So whatever money I made, I lost. And then because I had developed a market, people started fronting me. So long story short, that's all happening. Then I started taking LSD, and then people around me couldn't get good LSD, and I knew some good LSD. So I'd buy 100 hits at a time and just kind of sell hits to my friends. And we go on and on and on. The next big turning point was the Hot Tuna concert when they played in Binghamton in 1974. Me and two friends had tickets, and we wanted to dose for the show, but there was no LSD to be had in Albany. And I was looking for 3 hits. I called my friend in Brooklyn and I said, hey, we want to go see Hot Tuna. I need 3 hits of acid. Do you have any? He goes, oh yeah, I got acid. But yeah, my dad did VS, yeah. Playing the ponies, and the fact of the matter is there's no future in it. They take 15% off the top and the races are fixed. You know, no serious gambler could make money at the track unless he has inside information. God, I lost my train of thought again. Where was I? This is what happens when you blather. So yeah, the plan was so I didn't stop gambling. I was losing money, and people started, because I had a market, people would be fronting me the weed, and then I'd take it on consignment and I'd sell it, and then I'd gamble the money away before I paid my connection, and I ran up a debt. Now the other thing in the background of the story is when I was 2 years old, I had an accident, and long story short on that one, we sued the city, and it was going to be $5,000 in a trust account waiting for me when I turned 21. And at this point, I was 20. Not Hot Tina, Hot Tuna. Tuna, yeah. All right. They were great, unbelievable band. Loved Hot Tuna. Saw them at least 10 times. So so anyway, I was getting close to my 21st birthday, and and people knew that I had $5,000 coming to me, which meant that I was getting more drugs fronted to me, which meant I was gambling more and selling more, and I was on what I would call my carousel of insanity. And when the $5,000 came to me on my 21st birthday, I owed out $7,000 to various drug dealers and bookmakers. So of course that money was gone. And now if you thought I was scared about the $300 in bonds being missing, I was really scared about my trust fund being missing. So I started dealing more and gambling more and more and more and more and more, and culminating in November 3rd, 1975. I turned 21 on March 20th, 1975. So it was just some months after my 21st birthday. I made that fateful sale according to the indictment. By the way, the indictment's a lie. It didn't happen the way the indictment says, but I was facing a lot of time. I made a second sale on November 5th. They got that one right. That actually went the way the indictment said. And it was in New York State at the time, we had the Rockefeller drug laws, and it was life sentences. It was Rockefeller wanted to be president, and he put forth the toughest drug law in the country, and I got caught in that. So I was facing mandatory prison time, even though it was a first offense for anything, and I was facing life. So I had two counts. One was 8 1/3 to life. One was 1 to life. And they made the deal that if I pleaded guilty to the 1 to life, they would drop the 8 1/3 to life. And I'm thinking, me being the way I am, 8 1/3 inside will change me forever. 1 year, I might just be able to keep my head down and come out as me. So even though I had a path to beating the case, because the evidence in the case was, in finger quotes, destroyed in testing. So they had no physical evidence against me. But although I've already established that I'm quite a gambler, one thing I couldn't gamble with was my basic life. So I pleaded guilty, did the year, tons of stories about that year, and I have a lot of them recorded, and I have a lot of them written. And if you stick with this channel, it's all going to come out. If you look at my latest release from a few days ago, from the public library to the prison library, I kind of hint about the story. And now that I have somebody actually asking about it, that's you, Mr. or Miss Adams. Can I call you VS? Is that okay? I feel even more compelled to tell the story. But tonight was really me being needing to vent about the state and nature of independent journalists these days. I really do feel that, and one of these guys is a very close friend of mine, and we're not even speaking to each other now because of this, and that's really sad. But again, I want to hold Indy media to the standard that they held themselves to for 7 years, and I just am not seeing it right now. So as far Vic, all right, Vic, cool. Vicky. So Ms. Adams. All right, Vicky, nice to meet you. So yeah, just to tie it all up, this was to be a blather about the state of independent media. Now, hey, and Miguel. All right, so Miguel, Vicky, Miguel, and here we are. You guys, no matter what happens down the road, if I end up with 2,000 subscribers, which will never happen, but if I do, Vicky and Miguel are will always be my first live interaction on a live stream. So peace to both of you. Yes, you are making history. I love it. So okay, I think that might be enough for one night. You guys, Miguel and Vicky, and anybody else who might catch this, I'm thinking I'm going to post it. If anybody, let's see if I can hold anybody's attention for. I'm not sure how long I've been going. Oh my God, 42 minutes. I usually don't talk for more than 10. So this truly was Blather. And yeah, okay, Vicky. Yeah, if you watch from the beginning, I'm not sure if you'll be able to until I put it back up. I'm not sure how that works, but if you can, yeah, please do. Anyway, like I like to say at the end of all these things, the bloomer, the boomer has blathered. Peace out, and thank you guys for tuning in.